Welcome back to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where you'll find information on what's going on the North Fork of Long Island. We'll be focusing on issues and opportunities going on in the community, as well as people and stories from the present and the past. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 42, our guest today is Bob Kuhne. He's the president of the Old Town Arts and Crafts Guild on the North Fork, and he talks about his time growing up in East Meadow, as well as his decision to relocate to the North Fork and his passion for the arts. Bob also discusses his painting process and his journey with the Arts Guild, as well as his perspective on the North Fork today. So I hope you enjoy episode 42 with Bob Kuhne. This episode was recorded March 28th, 2024. Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. Thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is an experience.
Thank you. So I'd like to just start off with an introduction, just kind of where you were born and raised.
Okay, well, my name is Bob Kuhne. I'm president of the Old Town Arts and Crafts Guild. I've been living out in New Suffolk about 40 years now. I was born in Brooklyn. 2 years afterwards, my parents moved to East Meadow, which is the town next to Levittown. All the baby boomer families, etc., moved out to Middle and Nassau County back in the day. And that's where I was raised, in East Meadow. It was a great little town. It was lower middle class suburbia. There was still a little bit of country there. We had a farm behind us for a couple of years, but then again, housing, took over.
Yes.
But pretty much that's, where I was born, raised. Eventually, I moved to Smithtown with my wife, and like I said, 40 years ago, moved out to New Suffolk. We wanted a different type of lifestyle. We wanted the country life, and that's what we have out here.
And so, in terms of your ancestry, how far back can you track your ancestry on your father's or mother's side?
Actually, my brother did a chart, but my remembrance is really just my grandparents. I only remember my mother's side grandparents. They were Italian in Brooklyn. They couldn't even speak English. We used to go into Brooklyn. They'd hug you, kiss you, and then you just, talk Italian. Unfortunately, I never picked any of it up. On my father's side, my grandmother she was the inspiration that I have today. But my grandfather I never knew, because he died like at age 34 or so. Mm-hmm. But my grandmother, on my father's side, she was a very strong-willed person. She, because I guess my grandfather died so early, she had to raise 4 children. And the youngest, I think, at the time was like 7 or 8. My father, being, I think, 16, had to quit school and go out to work. So she had a very hard life, but it made her a very strong woman. She wound up actually living to 100.
Wow.
And
then does she grew up in Brooklyn?
No, she was actually in Queens, but she actually lived in our house in East Meadow. Oh. We had a Cape Cod, and she had the whole upstairs. But as we were getting older, my I was the oldest, and I have two brothers. As we were getting older, we started taking one room from the upstairs, then eventually, two rooms. But she lived with us pretty much my whole life up there.
Wow.
So it was very interesting, yeah.
And can you say what she had to work?
Yes.
At that same time, even...
No, by then she wasn't working.
Oh, okay.
All her children were raised, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
We were the grandkids.
Yeah.
She used to take care of us to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
But no, at that point, I don't remember her working when she was living with us. But before that, she had, all these various jobs and stuff, went through the war, the whole bit. So she did, like I said, my father even had to leave school, in order to, bring in a couple of bucks.
Mm-hmm.
But
where did you mention your mother's side? They were Italian.
yes,
And then your father's side
was basically German.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. So we used to go, very family orientated. We used to go every Saturday or Sunday to visit either my mother's side of the family, and then the other day see my father's side of the family.
Mm.
So
was it kind of like a Sunday go to grandma's?
Oh yeah, yes, that's exactly what it was. So like I said, we would hit
Hit both.
one side of the family, one on a Saturday and the other side on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So we always knew our cousins and everything else. It was, it was a lot of fun, I guess, back then.
Yeah. And for your parents, can you tell me how they met?
Yeah, they actually met at work. I guess my father was the boss or something or another, an office job.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was a secretary back then. There was a big difference in age. My father was 10 years older. My father was brought up in Queens and my mother in Brooklyn. But again, they met at the office. When they decided to get married, my mother was Catholic, my father was Protestant. They wouldn't allow them to be married in the church. It was like one of those things where they said, no, you have to be married in a rectory or something or another. So that left me a bitter taste years later, about this, religion and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was, made a big difference. What was the big deal? They wanted to be married. They wanted to be married in the church. No, he was Protestant, but he said he would be, he would do whatever. But
whether she was Catholic, and she was Catholic, and they didn't want that.
No, they wanted a mixed marriage. Correct.
Yeah.
So they, kind of shunned it and said, no, you can only be married in the rectory, not in the church itself. Even though my mother had a promise that the kids would be raised Catholic.
Mm.
So, but anyway, they had, again, originally they lived in Brooklyn for 2 years.
And you were born there.
I was born there. I guess when I was 2, I almost got hit by a car. So that's when my parents decided to move to the country, to East Meadow. And again, that's when everybody was moving out to Levittown, and that area.
Yes.
So.
And then what did your parents do for work?
Well, again, my mother originally, I guess, was just secretary. But then afterwards, when she had children, she's basically a stay-at-home mom.
Yes.
Back then, careers weren't a big thing for women.
Yes.
My father had a couple of jobs. Eventually, he worked at Bank Americard, which is, I guess, the credit card company that is now Chase, or, it's part of Chase Bank.
Okay.
But he was in charge of the credit card stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what, he did. And again, my mom, pretty much was stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
She did menial jobs like home typing and things like that. But
Yeah.
it wasn't. She just brought in a couple of bucks.
Mm-hmm.
But she wanted to be home with the kids. So, I think it was quite different, than today, where you have both parents out working, and then they shuffle off the kids to daycare and stuff like that, right?
or they have a nanny or
right,
or something like that.
So
and so were you around 3 or 2, 3, 4?
I was actually 2
when you went to East Meadow.
Yes, yeah.
How was that as a child growing up there, and how would you describe you mentioned kind of a suburban community, but what would you do for fun in the area?
It's funny because all the neighbors were on the same economical level. Mm-hmm. They all had basically identical houses, and everybody was having kids at the same time. Mm-hmm. So you go down the neighborhood, there was always, kids your age, both male, female, didn't matter. And everybody knew everybody on the block. Mm-hmm. So one of the big things that we used to do as kids is we'd always play baseball or stickball. And it would be right in front of our houses. And, we just played day and night just about. Mm-hmm. That was like a lot of fun for us. I do remember all the neighbors having what they called a block party, where they actually closed off the street. And once a year, like in the summer, they would have barbecues and, I guess they had beer and wine and whatever, but, we were kids.
Yeah.
But every summer they would do that. They would have block parties. And it was a lot of fun, just doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Later on, as, I guess in school, I was taking the violin. Back then, they didn't have... too many options for other musical instruments other than, the classical ones. You take trumpet or whatever. It was, I guess, 1964 when the Beatles came out that I threw away my violin and picked up a guitar. And so I've been playing guitar, since then. So that's been like a lot of fun and stuff, and it was just, those are the things that I did. So, we had, a few kids in the neighborhood that played instruments. As it turned out, both my younger brothers wound up playing drums. Mm-hmm. So we had, we always, used to play music and stuff. We had, down in our basement, and nice days we'd be outside and play for, some audiences or whatever. Isn't that nothing major?
Yeah.
But, and then eventually I had a female guidance counselor, and she pushed me to go to college. I had no money. And she said, well, you should go to college. There's a war out there. It's called Nam. You're going to be drafted if you don't go. So she pushed me into college. She got me into the local Farmingdale College, and so that's what I did. I wound up going to college after that. So,
did you know you weren't sure what you wanted to do coming out of high school?
No. I was obviously playing music. I thought I would get a scholarship for sports, but that was, I think the coaches and stuff always egged you on so that you'd play better, but the scholarships weren't there, and I was more into music at that time than the sports, so that was my thing. But again, once going into college, even the music, not that I stopped playing, but that avenue, I wasn't crazy about it anyway. Playing in bars late at night and blah blah blah. That wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
So.
And your guidance counselor told you to go to college or wanted you to go to college because of Vietnam.
Yes. She said I'd be drafted. There's a deferment to go to college at that time. And so she said, no, you should go to college. And again, I had no intentions of going to college. I had no money. But again, she said, no, we'll work something out. I'll apply, for certain colleges that are inexpensive for you.
Yeah.
I wound up taking out a loan or two to do that, but I did. So.
And what was it kind of a general, in terms of what you were studying there?
No, actually, she pushed me to take all kinds of civil service tests and everything else. So I took police tests. I took, like probation. I don't even remember. I just took whatever test she told me to take.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I'll do that. But, getting back to like school, I was very bored in school, not college.
In high school, middle school,
even elementary school. My mind was always preoccupied. I was never, really a good student. My mind would just be wandering. I'd always be doodling and drawing. I'd always get yelled at. There was one time when I was sitting by the window. I could still picture it to this day. And I'm staring out the window and staring out the window. And the teacher finally says, I forgot what, Robert, what are you doing? And I said, it's a Corvette Stingray. And she goes, what? And I said, it's a brand new Corvette Stingray. And she just like looked at me and was like, what's your problem? Where are you? And I was like, well, that's where my head was at. I used to like to draw cars and do things like that. I used to like to draw houses and things. That's what I would, preoccupied with doing.
Yeah. Is that kind of, when did you first get interested? Is that when you kind of first got interested in the arts? Or just, you didn't even know, you were kind of just...
I didn't even know. Again, I used to like to draw and design, different cars, as a kid. And the same thing with houses and stuff. I would do the same thing. I would just design different houses. I didn't realize that that was art. I just liked to do that. So it was, I guess, the beginning of my art.
Yes.
But one of the things that was interesting is I think it was 5th grade, it was geography class. And the geography was basically, they had a book and it said, Cutchogue was the sunniest place in New York State. And I say, where the heck is Cutchogue? And, because here I am in the middle of Nassau County. I'm just, growing up. I was, like I said, 5th grade. And so I took out a map of Long Island and, I couldn't find Cutchogue because I'm looking like in Nassau County. I looked a little bit into Suffolk, not realizing it was all the way out in the North Fork. And who knew years later that I'd be living out here. But it was strange that I to this day, I still remember, that part in the book saying that it was the sunniest place in New York State.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I do have a plaque now, on the main road indicating that, Cutchogue is the sunniest place in New York State.
Yes.
So, but that was one of my more positive days at school where I wanted to learn something. But most of the time, like I said, I was, my mind was just off and wandering. I never really read a book or anything at that point. I was just bored with a lot of stuff. I only started reading when I went to college because I had to pay for my books. And I had a different attitude. You know, at that point, I had to pay for my school. I had to pay for my books. So I started to read, and get involved in that. Whereas before then, it just didn't interest me at all.
And what did you do after college?
I worked at social services. It was, a job, again, civil service. Again, my counselor, said take as many tests as you can. That came up. I actually I think the police test, it was in Nassau County that I passed. I even went down to the physical. I did all the stuff, and then later on I found out that I had a hearing loss in my left ear. So I went to the doctor, and they said, yeah, you got a hearing loss. Now, at that time, I was only 18 years old. And, they said that I, was not approved, obviously, to be a police officer at that time. And so, like I said, I went to my doctor and said, yeah, you have a hearing loss. I said, is it that bad? And they said, no, you just can't hear high-pitched sounds in your one ear. I said, should we fight it? They said, you can't. They have their regulations, and if you fight it, it's not going to matter. So I took a lot of other tests. I wound up working at social services.
Okay.
I did that for, I guess, 30 years. Got a nice pension, but I always still did my artwork, and I always still played music. It's just that, it was a different level at that time.
When did you start painting?
Well, had to be in my, 18 or so that I was painting, because I did that one painting when I was 21 that Nora put on her website. So I know that, I painted around that time. I did a lot of, different things back then, as far as more abstract, I guess, and different things. But yeah, I was painting back then,
And did you work, you said you were drawing, did you work in any other mediums early on?
Yeah, I did a lot of woodwork. So I would make, even to this day, I make a lot of birdhouses, different. I would use, going to yard sales or whatever, I'd see Tinker Toys, and I'd buy them, and I'd put Tinker Toys on the roof and make it their little branch or whatever. So I still...
Even, you've done game board pieces?
Yes, and I have game boards that I make. Which are a lot of fun because you could use almost anything from a checkerboard to a Parcheesi board, and I guess the Pennsylvania Dutch use a lot of designs like that, and when we always go to Amish country, whatever, even their quilts and everything always has these designs, and I was always fascinated with that. And so I have made, hand-painted game boards and stuff as well. Anything out of wood I was pretty good with. When I was, I guess when I was, I don't know, in my 20s or so, I didn't have that much money. I would build furniture. I would make lamps. I would, design all these crazy things. And it was great. I would make platform beds. I would do all kinds of stuff. And it just came from my head, half the stuff. So I'd made some crazy designs. I'd make them for my parents, for instance. I'd have, there was a bookshelf and a lamp combination. And then eventually they wound up putting flowers in it as well. But again, I don't know if it was because I didn't have that much money or my creativeness was really just, spewing out.
Yeah.
Because,
see what I can work with, whatever material. Yeah.
And then my brother-in-law at one point was doing stained glass. He goes, oh, I could show you. This is easy. I said, it is? He says, yeah. Within a half hour, I was making stained glass pieces. It was a lot of fun. You just have to be careful, obviously, not to get cut. But so I do work in stained glass and, a lot of wood stuff. And again, you know, I still play guitar. I dabble in the keyboards. So I keep pretty active. And again, I just don't want to be bored. So that's why I do all these different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you moved to Smithtown. When did you move out that way?
When I met my wife, I was going through a lot of different things. And eventually we moved to, Smithtown. You know, we were there for quite a while.
Do you have kind of like our time frame of like kind of how long you were there? What years maybe?
Like 80 to 85.
Oh, okay.
She was there before that.
Okay.
Because I met her in 1980. So, and then in 85 we moved out here.
Oh. Okay.
So,
you were living in Smithtown, but had you visited the North Fork ever before that?
Yeah, actually it's funny because when I was in East Meadow growing up, one of the neighbors actually moved to Mattituck. And there were two sisters that my age pretty much. And so they moved out to Mattituck. I had no clue, where Mattituck was, other than finding out it was right next to Cutchogue. But so it was her senior year, and she didn't know anybody. So she actually invited me, and I was a junior, I guess, at that time, to her prom, which was actually in the gym of Mattituck High School. So
Wow.
I went to, I guess it was 1967 that I went to the senior prom of Mattituck. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but other than that, no.
Nothing after that until the 80s.
Yeah, and in the 80s, my wife and I started, making trips out here. We liked Shelter Island, again, because we both liked antiques and yard sailing and stuff. Sometimes we'd get to the North Fork and we'd make it to Jamesport, and that would be it. And maybe the next time we'd make it all the way out to Greenport, just depending how many sales were on the street and stuff. But we always did like Shelter Island. We wound up getting married on Shelter Island at Ram's Head Inn. Just four of us, so it was no big deal. But, we considered even moving to Shelter Island, but we realized it was too inconvenient. It was like, so we looked around for houses for a while, and then something came up in New Suffolk, and basically we just bought it. We wanted something with water view or at least walk to the water, and this house apparently just came on the market. The real estate agent called us up and said, I don't even know what the house looks like because all I got a picture of is this water with a Christmas tree. So we get to the property, and I'm looking at his listing, and I'm looking at this Christmas tree and seeing the water, and he said, well, that must be the house. And so we just turned around, we looked at the water, walked down to the water, and said, okay, we'll take it. We didn't even go in the house yet. It was a small little house. I think it was less than 800 square feet. But
you kind of knew this was perfect.
Yeah, it was what we wanted. It was tiny, but it was fine. And as it turned out, we moved a couple of times since, but we've actually right now live only 4 houses from that original house.
Oh, okay.
So. And again, still in New Suffolk, so,
Yes.
Yeah.
And kind of when you first started coming out here, or the initial visits, how would you describe the North Fork at that time?
It was very, very country. It was very rural. I loved it. It was, on the road, you only saw, pickup trucks. You never saw a Mercedes or a BMW. You never saw a limousine or these tour buses. It was, like I said, very country at the time. Just farm stands, etc. The wineries were just starting out, so you really didn't hear them. They weren't really established.
There was still more potato fields and
Yes.
farm.
Yeah, yeah. Again, just the farm stands. There wasn't much to do out here. There was tons of restaurants, not all the high fancy ones there are today. I remember going to one in Mattatuck, and we would get a lobster dinner for $8.95, and but they had plastic utensils. We'd bring our own, regular utensils with us, and you get crab cakes for like $2. It was just but those places are all gone now. I mean, it's just. But that's the way it was back then. We were shocked because nobody locked their doors to their car, to their house. Our neighbor in New Suffolk went on vacation, and I went over there to ask them a question or whatever one day, and the screen door was the only thing that was there. The regular door was open, but nobody was home. And I found out afterwards they were on vacation for over a week, and that's the way they left it. And it was like,
wow.
yeah. And New Suffolk is different. It's one of those towns where we don't get mail delivery, so everyone has to go to the post office to pick up their mail. We all have post office boxes. So what happens is, even if you don't know the people, you recognize them. So if there's a strange face out there somewhere. But everybody kind of knows everybody in the town. There's only like 22 streets. It's off the beaten path. And, it's just a quaint little town. I just, we always loved it. It's,
Definitely.
Yeah.
And how would you describe the art side of things out here? And you mentioned, I think, that you were interested in the antiques and going to antique sales, but at that time were there other galleries, or did you start meeting artists?
Yeah, actually, what happened was when we moved out here, Scott Russell, our former supervisor, had an antique store in Southold. He wanted to get into politics at the time. We knew his parents. So Scott said, "Oh, you guys are into antiques. Why don't you take over my store?" Bottom line was we wound up doing that. We made arrangements with the landlord, etc. So we took over the antique store. We sold antiques. We sold some of my artwork and some crafts there as well. So that was pretty, a lot of fun stuff. As far as galleries and other things, I wasn't really aware of them at the time. I knew there's a lot going on in Greenport. But, we were just trying to make it, in Southold in our store. So, and what happened was I guess after a while, we started renting out our parking lot space to other vendors, both antique or whatever. And it would draw a crowd. This was before people had tents and everything. So people just set up a table. We'd charge them like $5 or whatever. And we got a crowd that day. I'd set up a table. It would be nice. And we would sell a whole bunch of stuff. Some of the people would come into the store. We'd sell some stuff in there. So it was really good. One of the vendors was involved in the guild at the time. And he kept on pressuring me to join. He did a lot of woodworking and stuff. And his wife did antiques. So when we eventually did close the store, because he wanted me to join the guild, I said, well, I have my outlet here. I have my store. I could sell my stuff here. It's not a problem. So, but when we got rid of the store, we started to do a lot of shows. That's when I joined the guild.
Okay. And then could you say what happened with the store How long did you have the store?
About maybe 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
And then decided to...
Again, we realized that the activity was really in shows. People saw that there was, again, not that there were tents, but they saw that there were tables and a lot of different people, with showing all their stuff. And again, people would stop. They also stopped because of our store name, which was called Needful Things by Stephen King.
Oh.
So people, of course, stopped and used to take pictures of, a road sign and stuff, which was interesting. But that was, that's what we did. We decided, because back then the winters were really rough. There wasn't many people out here. Then we had a heating bill to worry about, and not many customers. So we decided to do shows, and we did them from Huntington down to the Hamptons, and then eventually, just the ones I promote now at the Guild, which is 12 or 13 of them just on a North Fork now.
Yeah. And you mentioned that how you got involved with the Old Town Arts and Crafts Guild. You were a member there for a while?
Yeah, when we closed the store, that person, his name is Bob Viller, actually, he again pushed me to be a member. So when we closed the store, I said, okay, I'll join. Actually, it's funny because you are juried, in as a member, and I was rejected at first, and I guess they didn't like what I was bringing in, and so I brought in some other material. I brought in some hand painted furniture and other things, and then I was accepted. So I was there for probably a good 3 or 4 years, and at that time, the president couldn't handle it. She was only there for a couple of months, and the shop manager, she was always wanted me to be like in charge. So she wanted a male figure, really. Because most of the guild at that time was pretty much female, other than the person that got me into it. Most of the members were females.
But what you said, there was a juried show. You submitted work.
Yes.
For that. What was the work that you submitted, if you could describe it?
Well, I submitted, I guess, some watercolors and some other things that were just okay. They weren't really.
It's not like what you're doing now. It was just different.
It was different, yeah. And again, I didn't know what they were looking for. So I had pieces of furniture that I painted also. One with like a clipper ship, another one with a nice scene on it with some boats, etc. And then they realized, okay, yeah, he can paint and stuff like that. So, it was just a matter of showing them, I guess, the right material.
Yeah.
Again, they didn't want abstract type of stuff. They wanted, more traditional art.
And that's kind of how it got. Well, I guess, could you describe what it was like when you first got there, what the building was like, and the organization at that time? You mentioned that the president at the time, or that was for a few months, they were kind of
usually the presidents would last, like 1 or 2 years or whatever. And this one, she was a little bit younger than me, I guess, but she just couldn't handle it or didn't want to handle it. And again, they just asked me to be the president. And, I was a little hesitant at the time, but I did it because I was only there for like 3 or 4 years. So when I first got there, there's a lot of history with the Art Guild. It's been there, we're going into our 76th year.
Wow.
So they started in 1948. It's an old 1850s building. When I got there, they did do a renovation in the back, so the back two gallery rooms were relatively new. But the whole building, etc., had displays both of art, crafts. It was pretty much open 7 days, but their hours were very awkward. And of course, they were closed in the winter because they don't really have heat. They use air conditioning, heating units. So when I got there, the one thing I pushed for was credit cards. I said, and they would say, oh no, they could pay by check, or they can run across the street to the bank and get money. I said, no, you're making it inconvenient for people. I said, people have plastic. And then finally they said, no, you don't understand, Bob. They can't run that machine,
Yeah, the slider.
Yeah, that slides. I said, no, though, they don't even have that anymore. They use that maybe out in the field. I said, no, they don't use that. But I had a tough time just convincing them to get a credit card machine. That's before I was president. So I would always ask and stuff about, different things. One of the other things that always disturbed me was the fact that they were a nonprofit organization. I'd say, well, what do we do that's nonprofit? And they didn't have an answer. I was like, don't you do anything? What do you do? What do you give back to the community? You have any art lessons? Do you do this? Do you do that? So I instituted a lot of things when I first got there. So,
what kind of things did you start?
Well, obviously I got the credit cards in there.
Yeah.
Now, actually, we have a barcode system for all our items. So we've kind of upgraded everything as far as that goes. Everything's computerized now. I started, first thing was to have children's art classes. So I started that. And then in April, usually the building would be empty. So I would have different types of either lectures or events. So we did things like plastic pollution. We did things on special needs individuals. That we did exhibits with them. We did stuff with, there was a young girl named Olivia, and she used to draw, and she asked the Audubon Society at the time when the Exxon tanker spilled all the oil that time, she said, well, I can draw, and maybe we could raise some money to save some of the birds and stuff. The Audubon Society said, yeah, and they ran with it. They actually made thousands and thousands of dollars, and she was at the time, I think maybe 13, when she wrote the book, with her drawings and stuff. And we had her probably when she was about maybe 16, and she gave a lecture at the Guild, showing all different things about, how the birds were affected with the oil and the whole 9 yards. So these are the types of things that I've instituted along the way. We've had many things, like I said, plastic pollution, where the kids would go and collect all the plastic from the beaches. And then they would make like totem poles out of all the pieces of plastic, whether they were milk containers or whatever it was. And it served a dual purpose. It was, cleaning up the beaches and showing how plastic, pollutes the environment, and at the same time turning it into art, which was just like a fabulous type of thing.
Yes.
And those are the types of, things that I tried to do. The same thing with the special needs individuals. Nobody wants to address that. They always just want to shun from it. These are people that have feelings, that they do have talent, but yet nobody wants to recognize them. And I actually went out of the way to do that. We would have exhibits and we'd give everybody, obviously, like a certificate. And then we'd tell people that they won. And they were gleaming, these kids. And adults, too, not just kids. But they were thrilled to be recognized, for their work and stuff. It was just, a fabulous type of thing.
Wow. And at the same time, while you were president, what were you working on in terms of your artwork? Because did you start getting more interested in kind of the artwork where you focused on the nature of the Peconic Bay? And
yeah, pretty much when I was younger, I would do a lot of abstract type of things. I would mix abstract with realistic pictures, sort of like Salvador Dali type of thing, where it'd be realistic but yet abstract at the same time. So I was doing things like that. But then when I got involved more in the guild, I realized that people liked local iconic scenes, and so I started painting that. And I just didn't do it as I don't paint every day. So, if I do something, I'm going in it full blast. And some of my paintings actually take a year to actually do. So I've done like montages of like the vineyards of the farm stands, where, just as an example, the farm stands, when I did that painting, it took me 2 months just to go around and photograph each farm stand. From the vegetables to the sign to the building to the people, whatever it is. And luckily for digital these days, because I was able to discard, all the unwanted stuff. In the old days before digital, I'd use up tons and tons of film.
Yes.
But anyway, and then once I had taken all these photographs, I would then put them on the computer, take the ones I wanted, actually make basic prints of some of the buildings or whatever I wanted to use. I'd cut them out. I'd put it on a big board, and then I would put certain buildings in certain areas, and try to get the colors to go. So like with the vineyards painting, there are a lot of roofs that are all maroon color. And I had to kind of separate them so they wouldn't all be clustered in one area. Just little things like that. And then after I figured out the basic design, I'd actually sketch it out on canvas and then take the paintbrush to it. So all in all, each of those paintings took a year each to do. The thing is that there's so much detail in it that people do appreciate it. So over time, I've sold, literally hundreds of these paintings because, they are so detailed. Most people just do a basic, boat scene or whatever it may be. But again, those montages that I do took a lot of time. I guess people appreciate that.
And I think that it has a painterly quality to it that you can kind of see a lot of the brush strokes and kind of from more of like a smoothed out, realistic boat scene. Whereas if you look at a boat scene you've done, you can kind of see more how you've worked on each individual areas of it with the brush, I think.
Yeah, I try to again, I try to get away from being realistic. I try to be more impressionistic. So if you really look at the painting, you say, oh yeah, that's Jamesport Country Store or the Magic Fountain. But when you really look at it, the colors are just so vibrant. They're so different. Again, like you said, the brushstrokes just aren't, so it almost appears to be like a realistic painting, but it's not. And you can see that it's very impressionistic. The ground or my roofs usually have hundreds of colors in them. And again, that's what I like about it. If you look at a tree, you'll see blue in the tree. You'll see different colors in the tree that normally you'd say, the tree doesn't have blue in it. But again, that's my interpretation. Again, I didn't want it to be realistic. The only type of realism that I happen to enjoy is I did go to the Southampton exhibit in Watermill, and they had a photo realism exhibit. And these pieces were, size of a whole wall. They were so realistic, it was like a photograph. And the quality was like just unbelievable. You just, I never saw anything like that before. It was really just great. But again, for me, if I wanted to do a painting like that, I just might as well take a photograph. I want to express myself when I do something. So in my paintings, that's what I'm doing. And a lot of it's attributed to a lot of the older North Fork artists that did do impressionist paintings. So I did, learn from that. Even though I'm self-taught, I would see what they did in their paintings, and I would try to use that as well.
And do you still do abstract work?
Yes.
You still?
Actually, that gallery in Southampton, Watermill, I can't think of the name of it offhand. But when I was there, I got the inspiration to do a painting of a gallery. But I did it abstractly. And so if you look at it, it looks like almost like a tunnel or a funnel. And the walls are actually wavy, and it has very vibrant colors. And it's obviously paintings all along the gallery walls in the picture. And each painting is different. There's like a little abstract painting. There'd be one that's of a farm stand or whatever, a barn. There would be all different ones. And then I put silhouette people in there looking at the gallery and stuff like that. So when you look at it, you say, yeah, is that a, no, that's odd. That's not a realistic painting. It's definitely abstract.
Yes.
So, so I still do stuff like that. Do I sell a lot of those? No. But I do sell some.
Yes.
But not like as many as I do of like my farm stands or my vineyards paintings or, some of the iconic, scenes that I do.
That's just kind of more iconic. And would you say like a lot of visitors and tourists are gravitate towards
those, definitely. That's the whole thing with artwork, especially out here. I find that a lot of people, they come out here, they're visiting the vineyards, they come to the farm stands, and when they see like my work, that's what they like. They like the iconic buildings. So I do the Jamesport Country Store, the Magic Fountain. I even did montages of each town. So there was 12 towns on the North Fork, and I did, that was a 2-year project, by the way. And again, the same thing. I would have these, it looked like a postcard type of a thing with the town written, and, I would paint all the different iconic buildings like in each town. So, for instance, like in Greenport, of course, I had the Carousel, I had Claudio's, I put in the hospital even I had in there. So I just took all the iconic places of each area, and that's what I would do. And I did that with each town. And when, like I said, when people come out, that's what they see. They see, oh my gosh, look at this. This is the Magic Fountain. My kids love that. So at one show, someone said, do you have 4 of them? And I said, yeah, I do. But, why do you want 4? Can I ask? She goes, yeah, 1 for each of my grandchildren. So, they see these iconic places, they recognize them, and I think that's what's really, what I like to do. I like to show the iconic places of the North Fork and put it all together. And the people like it. They really, again, yes, I could do things like the Salvador Dali type of thing, but am I selling that many of those? No. But again, it takes a certain type of person that would like that.
Yes.
But they are looking at people want, and I go with this with the historical art as well. A lot of people, if I have a winter scene, for instance, people don't really want the winter scenes. As an artist, we like to paint winter scenes, with the snow and everything else. It's a lot of fun. But the public doesn't really want winter. They want a summer scene. They want, as an example, I had a customer that kept on asking me, oh, did you do the windmill in Baiting Hollow? I said, no, it's still on my bucket list. I said, I even have it on my phone. I'll show you the picture. And the picture was of that windmill in the snow. And it had a big Christmas wreath around it as well. And he says, well, I'm not crazy, he says, about the winter. I said, I'm an artist. Don't worry about it. I'll change it. And then he goes, and I'm Jewish, and I really don't want the Christmas wreath. I said, that's the easiest part. So as it turned out, I wound up doing the painting for him. He commissioned me to do it, and I only agreed because he was a customer. And I wound up doing it like in springtime with flowers and everything else. And of course, the Christmas wreath wasn't on there. But most people just don't like the idea of winter scenes.
I like the winter scenes, but I know a lot of people want something maybe that's more, might come off more, warm and summery.
Right, they wanted to see a sailboat, for instance. They don't want to see
a sheet of ice.
Right, a sheet of ice.
And no boats out. But is that, and then how is that tough, just kind of working with customers and people who are interested? You don't mind changing the scenes as much, or is that kind of like, oh, that's a little bit, they're being picky with that, but at the same time, oh, I took this picture, I want to paint it like that. Why can't you just take it as it is? But
first of all, one of the things is I don't really do commissions for people.
Okay.
Because that just that they're too picky about certain things. When a person, I'm doing a show and they say, oh yeah, I want a painting, but it has to match my mauve curtains. It's like, that's the kiss of death right there. It's like, you don't tell me what colors to use to match your curtains. I mean, but I have done a few commission works. One of them was local people out here. They actually owned the funeral home in Cutchogue, which they just sold. But their family had an old Polish house that was renovated and moved to Halleckville. And they wanted a painting and be dedicated at the ceremonies and stuff. And so I agreed to do that. And that was like really nice. Again, I did it for 2 reasons. One, because of the historical significance, and the other because, again, this was a customer that has bought my work. And so I just basically said, you trust me to do what I have to do. And that worked out fine. So,
and kind of In terms of your process, do you, because you mentioned the water mill, but how do you get inspired to do a new painting? And you said that it can be a long process in terms of your paintings, but like you mentioned the farm stand and magic fountain, are you always looking for new?
Yeah, and it's funny because you just don't know when something's going to hit upon you. So in the winter, actually, I was jogging in my neighborhood in New Suffolk, and I go along this one creek where the Schoolhouse Creek, where it's a marina, and of course all the boats are covered, in their plastic and shrink wrapped and stuff. But there was one boat that was actually in the water, and it was never there. And so I just stopped jogging. I stood there for a minute or so, and I went home, got my camera, came back, took a whole bunch of pictures, and then started painting because that's what I saw. It was just, here it was, this one particular scene, and again, it just turned out really good because, I didn't see that scene before. And all of a sudden, there was this person's boat that was never in that water before in the middle of the winter. Like I said, all the other boats in the background are all shrink wrapped and, everything else. And it just turned out nice. You had all the sailboats with, their main beams coming up and everything. So, and then there was another time, just recently actually, that I was going to Founders Pub in Southold. Yeah. Now, I've worked with the Southold Historical Society for several years now, doing shows on their grounds. So I've been on their grounds many, many times. And yet, leaving the Founders Pub, I looked over, and the three buildings that were on Southold Historical Grounds were right there, and it was just the way they were lined up. And again, it was from the street where I was leaving Founders, and there it was. There was three buildings. There was a red one, a white one, and a blue one. And that's, of course, what I titled it, Red, White, and Blue. But again, it was just that angle, that I happened to notice it. And the couple that we were with, one of them is also an artist, and they did an interpretation as well of the three buildings. So we hung both of those paintings together, side by side. And it's very interesting to see two people's artwork displayed again.
And their own interpretation of it.
Yeah. But again, it was just like one of those things where
you weren't expecting. It's just like random. Something might just strike you. Yeah.
And again, a lot of times, I mentioned that a lot of stuff that I do does take a lot of time. I don't paint every day, but, when I do paint, I'm all in. And, and again, it's that type of thing. One of the paintings I did was of some antique tractors. And, I did my sky, and I did the barns, and the trees and everything else, and I did the tractors, and I couldn't figure out what else to do. So I just put on another album or whatever, and opened up a bottle of wine and said, okay, let's, think about this. And I just sat there for a good half hour or more. And finally, I just said, that's it. And I just took my big paintbrush, and I just took globs of paint and just went with big strokes, of grass. And that's the foreground of the painting. And it just like hit me all of a sudden to do that. And when you look at the painting, it's like, yeah, that fits. But it took me that time to just figure out what I was doing. Because again, I may be working off of photographs that I take, but a lot of times, either it's in the winter time or the the grass is is brown. So you want to, you want to put flowers, you want to do other things, you want to look nice. And with that was like a type of thing. And of course the title happens to be called Harvest Time, which is like typical of the grasses at the time, being that fall color.
Yes.
So it just worked out like really nice that way.
And this might be kind of, it might be a tough question, but do you have a favorite work that you've done that you can a favorite painting that you've done?
I have several. What I did one time is I was on a boat with a friend, and actually we went to Greenport, and I wanted to take pictures of a different perspective, and the perspective was to see from the water what the buildings looked like.
Yeah, because that's always fascinating seeing Greenport or whatever from the water.
Yes. So as it turned out, I was snapping pictures like crazy on the boat, and one of the things I tried to do was going down Main Street. Okay. And so there's Claudio's on one side and Preston's on the other, and I'm trying to get the right angle to get all the buildings down that street. Back then, there was no trees on it. They had planted tiny little trees at the time. So there was no foliage whatsoever. And when I got home, I was able to pick which angle I was able to get all the buildings in. Plus, on the left side, I wound up with Claudio's, and on the right side, Preston's. And then, of course, then the water and some boats, in the foreground. As it turned out, I submitted that painting for the Maritime Festival contest. And, there's only like 2 or 3 judges for that type of thing. And I usually don't submit that much work to like these contests, but I did back then. And, Mrs. Claudio called me up and she said, I got good news and bad news. I said, well, all right, what's the bad news? She goes, well, you only came in second place. I had to abstain because my name was on the painting. Because there, she had, it was just a sign, but it said Claudio's. So she goes, so I abstained. I said, okay, so what's the good news? She goes, I want the original. So she actually bought the original. I don't know where it is today because now they sold, but that was one of my favorite paintings, and along with that I made several others along the water as well. So actually my favorite is the one that's in front of Preston's with a sailboat. It's on my brochure, on the front of my brochure next to so that's
by Preston.
By Preston's, right. So that's just the continuation of
that one?
Yes, and that's the one right. So again, it's just a continuation on the water, taking different pictures and different view. I tried in the past to take aerial view paintings, but they didn't come out quite right. And so now I'm working with a photographer friend who actually got his license, because I didn't realize you need a license now to do a drone and take aerial pictures. And so, what I'm going to do is perhaps work with him and try to get some aerial pictures that I could actually paint. Which again is a different perspective.
Yeah, that would be really nice.
So usually you see that now, they use it for a lot of real estate. They'll show you the aerial view of the house or whatever. And that's sort of what I want to try to do, because again, it's a different perspective. When I was in the boat taking pictures, most people aren't on a boat. They can't get that view. So they only see what they can see. And the same thing, that barn in Laurel with the flag that they just renovated, for instance, including myself. Everybody's did a painting of that barn, but it's on the main road.
Yes.
So everybody sees it, which is great. But I try to get something that's out of the way. again, a different perspective. So
That
being
people
on the
don't
water was very helpful in getting those pictures that I painted.
Yeah.
And I have several of them actually, all along that waterfront in Greenport. And just like one after another, just dissected it,
So that's something you're currently working on?
The aerial
stuff.
Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly what I want, but I know I do want something that's going to be more of a aerial type of view. I did a montage of the North Fork. It looks like a map, I guess. It has the outline of the North Fork, part of Shelter Island, and everything is nautical on it. There's the lighthouses, and the Old Man in the Sea is in there, and a couple other things. But that's sort of like an aerial type of view also, but it was a little different. So that's what I'm trying to look for now. I'm trying to look for something like an aerial type of view. And again, I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking for, but when I see it, when it happens, it happens, and that's how I work.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then, do you have any exhibitions coming up?
Actually, no. I don't. What I'm doing is, one of my fellow artists has recently developed dementia, and she can no longer. She hasn't painted in a couple of years. She's now at an assisted living. And so what I'm doing is I'm working with the daughter and the son, and we're going to put together an exhibit at the Guild. And then they're going to, take her parents, the artist, to the Guild. We'll have a reception and stuff like that. So I'm working on doing that. A lot of stuff that I do for other people. In the past, when someone got elderly, like Dr. Larry Waits, he was the first veterinarian actually in Southold. And he was another one. He belonged to the Guild, but as he got older and I was president, I would go over his house and bring back work of his to display. And I did that with several people. To me, it was just a nice gesture to have their work still displayed. Physically, they couldn't do it anymore because, they were elderly and stuff. But I wanted to, present that. And that's what I'm trying to do also with, Joanne's work. Again, this is... So a lot of times I put my own stuff on hold, to do other things like that.
And with also being the president of the Guild, you also have to, you do a lot of shows there. How many shows do you have coming up?
Well, we do 13 shows a year.
Wow.
So, and they're all at different places. We use the Art Guild itself, but the grounds are limited. But again, we want people to come there because we want them to be introduced to the Guild, to see what the building is like, what the artists are like inside, etc. We also do shows at the Cutchogue Historical Society grounds on the Village Green. We do it at the Southold Historical Society grounds. We use the Mattatuck Historical grounds and the Mattatuck Park, which is actually on the bay in Mattatuck. So we do other venues for diversification.
Take it outside of the building, out of just the Guild building.
Yeah, because frankly, if people keep on seeing, there's a show at the Guild, they'll say, they have it every time. We can go next week or whatever. But this way, there's just a few there, and then again, and each show is going to have different vendors anyway. It's just that I promote them all. We have live music, etc. So I'm at all the shows. So it's a great venue. Again, It's just an extension of when we left our store, and that's why I've promoted them. And for the Guild itself, it's one of our biggest money-making venues. Is the shows. So pretty much we keep all the vendor fees, etc. We do very well selling at the Guild. Actually, this past year we did the best ever as far as sales. And considering we're only open 9 months out of the year, and we did a shortened version because of COVID, we've been still struggling with that. But we did make a lot of sales. But the Guild only takes 30% of the sales. The artist gets 70%. So a lot of our revenue actually comes from the shows itself. So that's been a big part of the Guild's revenue.
And how do you become a member and get involved? I mean, for someone that, say, might be interested.
Yeah, we're open to anything. Again, artists, craft person, even musicians. We almost started to get into the acting as well, but that was a little more difficult for us.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you that in a little bit. So as a person comes to us, basically, we don't want juvenile art. We don't want things in very poor taste. So we obviously any explicit nudity or anything like that, even though it's art, we have a lot of children that are always coming into the gallery. We obviously teach children art classes, and so some things, if it's very explicit, we won't accept.
Okay.
But we try to get a caliber of quality, whether it's in pottery, whether it's in glassware, painting, crocheting, doesn't matter what it. So pretty much we kind of, 3 people have to kind of say, yeah, we like this person's work. So you have to kind of be approved on that sense. Again, then the person is a member. There's a lot of benefits to being a member, including displaying their artwork and stuff like that in the gallery. They get half off on all the shows fees. They have an opportunity to put things on our online store. So there's a lot of things. And basically, everything is volunteer at the Guild. So no one really gets paid. And that makes it difficult because you're talking, we're there setting up shop. We have a cashier there taking in the merchandise. We have people running barcodes. We have people doing the insurance for we have people doing our taxes. So it's the whole system that obviously I have to coordinate, but in order to get the job done, and it's hard when everybody's a volunteer. So if you're getting paid, that's one thing, but no one's getting paid.
And some people might say, I can't come in today, or
right.
Just kind of making sure everyone's showing up. It's always tough with the volunteer.
Yes. Plus, there's a lot of people that don't want to volunteer.
Yes.
The people just, all they want to do is sell their work. So they don't care about volunteering. They don't care about that we're a nonprofit organization. All they want to do is just sell their product. But that's not what we're about. Again, we're part of the community. We want to, do things. Again, we have, classes. One of the projects that we work on is called Project Runway. And we give art classes to kids. It's usually a theme, like Mardi Gras, for instance, and the kids will actually make all their costumes, all the props, etc., during their art classes, and then the day of the Village Green show, we actually have a carpet, a runway, where they actually dress in their costumes, okay, and all their props and everything, and the kids actually go walking down the runway. And the parents are obviously thrilled, and it's a big deal. Again, it's something, you see these kids, a lot of them, they ham it up. Some of them are very shy and bashful, and they don't want to, seeing the parents also is just wonderful to see them, glowing, taking pictures, and and of course a lot of parents ask me, oh, do you think my daughter or my son has a career in art? And I always say yes, but have a backup. Do something. Be an art teacher. And then, because art's a very hard sell. Not everybody's going to like your stuff. There are people that just walk by my booth. A lot of times they don't even look in. It's like, okay, and then they go to the next person's booth with all the antiques. Or maybe they like the photographer's stuff. But art itself is a very hard sell, and it's hard to make money in this world as far as that goes.
Yes.
It's difficult. So I always tell parents, there are a lot of things they can do. There's digital art. There's all kinds of stuff. Even comics. I mean, it's all animation. There's tons of things that could be done. But if you want to strike out on your own, you really have to be dedicated, and you really have to work hard at it. It's not something that's so easy.
No.
It's not a 9-to-5 job. There's a lot of work that I do behind the scenes that people don't realize with my own artwork. I'm making prints. I'm cutting mats. Putting them into folders. I'm framing. I'm making frames. Then I have to market the stuff, and there's a lot that goes into a lot of this, and people, are not aware. Years ago, I spoke to Jackie Penny, who just passed away. She was one of the local, artists that did fairly well out here. And, I went in there, I spoke with her because we were having an artist studio tour, and we asked her to be part of that tour. And, in discussion, she would say, oh, yeah, I have a publisher, but... And it's true. You go down to Florida into Walmart and you'll see her prints. And she says, but I only get like a penny a print. I was saying, that's ridiculous. She goes, not only that, she goes, then the people turn around and they say, oh, I don't like that one. I don't like this one. I don't like that paint. I'll take this painting. And they're picking and choosing out of her work. And she goes, it's very, very frustrating. And she says she doesn't really make that much money on, the prints itself.
Yes.
So at that point, I said, you know what? I don't want to publish you. I'll do it myself. Yeah, it's a lot more work. It's whatever. My stuff maybe is not sold in Walmart down in Florida, but, my stuff is hung internationally. My paintings are in everywhere from Germany, Italy, and I do ship out stuff to Florida and other places.
But you have more control over it than when you would go with, I think you lose some of the, sometimes you don't know where they might end up putting it, and like, they'll put it in Walmart, but you won't get as much for it, and you don't have any say.
Right.
Sometimes once you put it on that level with a publisher or something.
Yeah. And again, it depends how you feel about it. Do you want thousands and thousands of prints out there, or do you just want a handful? I mean, so to me, I'd rather have it limited. I know certain people that don't even sell prints. They just only want to sell their original work. To me, that's very nice and all well and good. But if I sold, my farm stands and my vineyards, there's thousands of people that would not, be able to own.
There'd only be one.
Right.
And then it would be out of sight
right.
most of the time.
Yes. And so now at least hundreds of people are able to enjoy, some of my work by having some of the prints. And today, some of the quality is really not the paper prints, but the canvas prints are so good. The texture is pretty much the same because it's on canvas. And, other than the fact that it's smooth, so you don't feel any of the paint buildup or the brush strokes and stuff like that. But you still, you are able to, I could hold up a canvas print next to the original and you can't hardly tell the difference. It's just amazing. It really is. But
I had, and then also with the guild, could you talk a little bit about, do you have a collection there of historical artwork too?
Yes. One of the things that I was able to do as president, I guess, is, I met a lot of people. And one of the people happened to be Terry Wallace. And Terry is from East Hampton. And years ago, and I'm talking about probably 70s and the 80s, he came to the North Fork. We used to go to every yard sale, every antique junk shop, whatever, and he would pick up impressionist paintings by the old North Fork artists. I met him because he wanted to collaborate on a lot of the artists and authenticate, whether they were with the guild back in the day, etc. So I helped him out a lot of times. Of course, I got credited in his books and blah blah blah. But it turned me on to a whole new area of art, which is the history of the North Fork, and it's just unbelievable to know that there are so many artists back in the day that painted, that were really good painters, and a lot of them didn't make that much money, and they were pretty poor. A lot of them painted on cardboard. A lot of them painted both sides of the cardboard. And like Whitney Hubbard, for instance, I'm sure that painting there is on board, not a canvas or anything like that. So they didn't really have that much money. But anyway, Terry wrote several books and popularized a lot of these artists. And a couple other people as well did so. Jeff Fleming from the Southold Historical Society. He used to be the director there. He wrote an extensive book called the Shared Aesthetic. Again, he went back even further as far as the generational artists that came to the North Fork in the 1800s and stuff like that. And so there is a big, rich history of art. And, it dawned on me that for several reasons. One is that a lot of grants that were given out are given out to museums and not to individuals. Or if they are given out to individuals, it's artists and stuff like that. But we couldn't get money for the building. That was the whole thing. And the only time you'd get money is if you were kind of like a museum. So as a matter of fact, one of the reasons why Southold Historical Society changed their name to Southold Historical Museum, so that they're able to get more grants. And with that in mind, and to try to preserve some of the artwork, I started collecting historical art, and we preserve that now at the Guild. And So we do have a pretty huge collection now, a good 100 pieces or so. Some of it's crafts that I picked up along the way, of members that I knew were from the guild. A lot of stuff I try to get former guild members, but I also will branch out and get other works of other artists as well. So that's been a main area that I thought was important, that we should preserve some of this artwork. Again, some of the historical societies do that, but I don't think a lot of the galleries are doing that.
No.
Like East End Arts or any of these other places.
Not so much where they have a collection of historical artists' work on the North Fork, which I think it's definitely important to know what people have been painting here long before we came out here, to just see that there was artists living out here, an artist colony, and
yeah,
definitely,
yeah, very big artist colonies out here. Peconic happens to be one of the more well-known ones, and again, it's just there's so much rich history, in general, and then again, you just have the artists themselves. So that was one of my projects, was to preserve some of the artwork. Even to the point of, I had several individuals give interviews like this to elderly members, so that could be preserved, as part of their, their artwork as well. So it's nice to know, that, you have Bob Kuhne's art, and then you say, yeah, well, he talked about that on this podcast about, how he, went about doing the farm stands and how long it took him and blah, blah, blah.
yes.
So it's always nice to have that little story to go with, whatever painting that there is.
Yeah.
And I always have a story for every painting that I do. There's always something,
It's not just like, that was that, but you actually you have something for each individual.
Yes. Every painting has some story to it. Again, whether it's like I explained before, the windmill, for instance, having, a winter scene that I changed over, and that the person was Jewish and he didn't want the Christmas wreath. Yeah. I mean, and the same thing, whatever painting I do, I always have some story to tell about it, and people like that. It gives it a little more provenance. It's something that they, they kind of enjoy.
Definitely.
So yeah. So one of the things I just wanted to mention is years ago, I tried to purchase the Methodist Church in Cutchogue. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the financing at the time. And, again, it would have been a big undertaking, but my vision was to have, and just picture a church. I mean, here you have an altar, and that would have been a perfect stage where all the pews were. I could have made like little bistro tables, etc. So I was prepared to do concerts and plays along with artwork and everything else. And sadly, like I said, unfortunately, I couldn't get the financing to do this. But what is interesting is that Southold does not have an arts center. There's, Huntington has Huntington Arts, Islip Arts, even Riverhead has East End Arts. And what makes us different at the Guild is that we own the property, we own the building, and we have total control over it, which is great in one sense, but then if something goes wrong, it's costing us a lot of money.
Yes.
On the other hand, East End Arts, they're basically leasing the building from Riverhead Town. If a light bulb goes out, they call up Riverhead Town, replace my light bulb. So, they have a lot more leeway financially to do things because we're trying to maintain our building. But yet, in certain ways, we're more independent than they are. But again, it would be nice that Southold would have, and that's what I was hoping to do with the church. Unfortunately, like I said, it just didn't financially pan out. But that would have been nice.
I know Cass kind of has some of that, where they have some events within the church, but they're not specifically just art. They might have art events happening, and then I don't know what you think about with the theater over here. That the North Fork Arts Center, I think they're going to try to have some other things, not just movies.
Right.
So we'll see what happens with
that. The theater is a great move. I think that's like really wonderful, what they're trying to do there. And actually, I was one of 12 artists that was contacted that they put out a calendar for this year, for 2024, and all the proceeds were donated to the theater.
Okay.
So, myself and 11 other artists actually donated our, pictures on the calendar. But Cast is in a different category. They're appealing to, underprivileged type of people. Again, the arts are always down at the bottom. It's different if you volunteer for an animal rescue league, or you volunteer for a cancer society or whatever. People have, they want to do that type of thing. So they want to help, Cast, the people want to help, underprivileged type of people. In the arts, it's not that way. It's like the lowest rung, especially for volunteerism, for nonprofit. And so it makes it harder for my organization, for instance, to get grants and stuff like that. Whereas some of these other organizations, they do. So Cass, just as an example, was able to buy that church, which was one of the ones that I was looking at the time, because it's part of the Methodist Church.
Yeah.
And that theater company couldn't make it. But they wound up spending $3 million on it, and then I understand another $1 million to renovate it.
Yeah.
We just didn't have that kind of money, but they obviously get it for a different reason.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but the arts definitely gets kind of thrown at the bottom.
At the bottom.
Because I think they're always looking for. They're always expecting things that has to have some specific outcome at the end that leads to something else, where it's like, well, just supporting the arts and an organization, it doesn't have to, or they might expect something to bring in a certain amount of money, and like with a lot of the arts, it is a tougher thing with that too, but it definitely is something that doesn't get appreciated as much.
Right. And like I said, one of my major problems is people to volunteer. So a lot of people, yes, we do have core people that are dedicated to our cause, but there are a lot of people that just want to sell their artwork and that's it. They don't want to know that we're nonprofit and we should be teaching kids how to draw or whatever. All they're concerned about is selling their product. So again, and it makes a difference. I volunteer at the Animal League because I love animals, and that's the whole thing. But I also love art, so I'm more dedicated in this case. But again, the arts are kind of like on the bottom as far as that goes. But again, it would be nice to have some more organizations. I mean, I always promote the Guild as the oldest gallery on the North Fork. I'm not sure about the South Fork. But, you think about it, and it's like, okay, you have a couple of galleries here in Greenport. You have the Guild in Cutchogue, and you have Alex Ferrone also in Cutchogue, and then you have that William Reese Gallery in Jamesport, and then East End Arts, and that's it. I mean, there really isn't that many. Yeah, there's a lot of artists out here, but not that many organizations that actually promote it, or galleries. I mean, my friend Joanne, she used to belong to Rich Fiedler's gallery, and all her stuff was on the second floor or whatever. She paid a lot of money for gallery space. When you consider how much space the Guild has and what you're getting, it's a bargain. I mean, you think about it. It's like, plus we only take 30%. A lot of galleries are taking 40, 50%. So,
yes,
it's but again, there's not that many organizations out here, and how many are nonprofit? So all the ones in Greenport, other than the theater now, they're just individually owned. They're not, a nonprofit organization. So there's, other than the theater, the North Fork Theater in Mattituck, and
it's definitely not. It's not on. It definitely could use more, or it's. And then if you're comparing it to the South Fork, it's probably less. And I mean, they have the parish art museum, but they have the Southampton Art Center.
Yes.
And they have other things that I'm blanking on, but no, that's definitely something that. But I think what you're doing at the Guild is definitely having a space like that for people to show and get involved, and not as a nonprofit and not something that's private is important, where it can be tough for artists that even might not be as well known to showcase their work.
And one of the problems is that you get an artist, they join, and just an example, they don't sell, and it could be a lot of reasons. We don't dictate what price to put on an individual's work. That's up to the artist themselves. So sometimes they may price themselves too high, and I get that. Doing crafts, for instance, it takes me a long time to make a birdhouse. Okay, I'm putting everything together. I'm not going to Michael's and buying a birdhouse and then decorating it. I'm physically making that birdhouse, and then you sit there and you say, okay, I'm selling it for $75, and what does that work out per hour of your time? It's like pennies.
Yeah.
I mean, so
you're giving it away.
Yeah, and people say, no, I have to get $50 an hour or whatever. It's like, well, you're not going to, But the quality of stuff at the Guild is really, really good. I mean, you do have people that spend a lot of time doing their craft. They do it well. We have several potters that are amazing. There's obviously people that crochet. We have people that do needle felting. There's all kinds of stuff, and each artist, craft person, does a wonderful job. What's nice about the Guild also is that we kind of it's like a family in a lot of ways. We there's a lot of close knit people. We have like a barbecue every year. We obviously hold tons of art receptions at the Guild. We usually have live music and other things that, tons of food. And, it's just a fun time also. So it's not just your art world, it's part of your social life too.
Yes.
When my wife and I moved out here 40 years ago, it was all right. We had the store, we had What else did we do? It was, all right, so we knew the antique world a little bit, and then we also knew the art world a little bit, and then I volunteered at the library. And just those things, we were able to make tons and tons of friends. Because when we came out here, we didn't know anybody. We still had friends back in Smithtown, but coming out here, it was like, no, we were starting out fresh pretty much. But just having those few avenues of social interaction, just made a big difference. So hopefully more people will, come out, join, again, just be active. And my philosophy has always been, you have to be out there. You got to be showing your stuff. I don't care if you're showing it at a winery or a library or wherever, or a gallery, but you got to be out there or at a show. Because once you stop, that's it. People aren't going to see your work. And then the more people that see it, it kind of like snowballs. It goes in, this one tells the next person, this person tells that person. One of the things that I never thought about being president, I didn't realize it until after, a certain time. It was like, you know what? Being president has actually helped my artwork because now people know me. They say, oh, yeah, that's Bob's work. Oh, yeah. A lot of times I get interviews with Newsday, for instance, and people say, oh, yeah, I love that painting you did of such and such. And I said, oh, no problem. I give them a print of it and, a framed print of it. So how much does it cost me? Doesn't cost me anything, but it's getting my name out there.
Yes.
I have note cards that, they cost a couple of dollars, whatever it is. Some of them I used to print up myself. But originally, what I would do is if someone bought some of my artwork, I give them the note cards that went with it. And hopefully they would send the note to their relative or friend, and they would see my painting on it and my website, and they would go to that and obviously purchase. So it's more like a marketing tool, but at the same time I was being generous also to do this. Yeah. And again, like I said, being president, I just got to meet more and more people, and it just, kind of like helped. So people now say, oh, I saw your art in such and such dentist, and I saw it at the cardiologist's office, and I saw it here. And it's like, well, yeah.
Yeah. No, but what about just kind of in terms of your artistic journey, what have you enjoyed? You could say enjoy or your journey. How has your journey been, and what have you enjoyed about that as an artist?
Well, pretty much, I think I may have said this before, but a lot of things that I did, I realized that my customers and people in general like the iconic scenes of the North Fork. And they gravitate to that. There are a lot of artists that do a generic scene of a boat or whatever, and they can sell that. That's great, but I think a lot of people look and they say, "Oh yeah, that's the Jamesport Country Still. Oh yeah, that's Claudio's. Oh yeah, that's the Magic Fountain, the Cutchogue Diner. Whatever it is that they see, they recognize it. And again, when they recognize stuff like that, people have come up to me and said, your artwork is basically quintessential North Fork. People recognize it because it is the North Fork, which in a lot of ways it makes it harder for me to sell to someone out in Arizona unless they've been to the North Fork. Yes. So but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be, like I said, my work is displayed internationally and all over the place. But again, I would probably have more if I didn't do that type of stuff. But people know that this is what I do, is the North Fork. So aside from, and that gives me a lot of joy, from people that, appreciate, my work. And they do. They just don't buy just one thing. They buy several because they like all the iconic things that I do. And again, I try to do stuff that takes a long time. Again, that farm stands painting, or the vineyards painting is, took a year each to do. There's a lot of work involved in that. It's
not something that like, oh, I'm just going to put out like a factory.
Right.
Like, it's something that takes time and
there's a lot of intricacy in it. There's, a lot of details. So someone said, well, how many farm stands are there in that painting? I said, I don't know. There's over 100, between signs and but it's a lot of detail. And that's what paid off, though. Again, I'm not out there painting every day, but when I do paint, I have a purpose and I definitely, want it to be something spectacular. I just don't want it to be blah. And if you do wind up with blah paintings, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like anything. It's like a musician. They put out several good songs, and then they put out some junky ones. An author does the same thing. They put out a couple of good books, and then some average, not so good books. So all artists are pretty much the same that way. But I do try, again, to put out some really good work, and so that it shows. Yes, it's very simple to sit there and say, "Oh yeah, I'm an abstract painter," and you just take a piece of canvas and you put a red dot in the middle of it and say, "Okay, I'm done."
Yeah.
Or do a deconing type of thing and take all the paint and just splash it on the canvas.
Yeah.
Well, my 3-year-old niece can do that. So I want something that shows some constructiveness, shows some artistic ability, something. Not just something simple or whatever. And I think that's what some of my montages do, and that's why I'm starting to lean more into doing that, because it's it's a lot of work. So my last 2-year endeavor was, again, doing each North Fork town from Riverhead out to Orient. I did it sort of like a postcard type of look, so a lot of people don't like that. But each town lettering is in vibrant, primary color type of thing. So that alone looks like, and I got the idea from the big lettered postcards. And but I also put in all the iconic buildings, etc., that in scenes that were there. Put the lighthouses in. I put whatever is in that town. And again, that was 2 years of work.
Wow.
And then, but it pays off because people see how much is into a painting. So it worked out pretty good, I thought, anyway.
Yeah. And separate from your artwork, what have you enjoyed over the years about living on the North Fork?
I just love the serenity. There's water everywhere. There's beaches, there's farmland. There's really, the North Fork has so much to offer. You have the sound, you have the bay, you have creeks, you have, all kinds of farming. Now you have the vineyards. So, I'm pretty active. Again, I used to jog all the time. Now I walk. But I still kayak. I still go bicycling, and it's so much fun to do these things. Because the scenery is just so great. It's just fantastic. Unfortunately, it's getting crowded. So if you're bicycling, you have to be careful.
Yes, with the traffic
And unfortunately, most people don't know the proper side to be on, whether they're walking or jogging or bicycling. And bicycling, you go with the traffic, and walking and jogging, you go against traffic. And you get people that don't know that, and it causes accidents. Plus there's other things that just I think and I look and I say, oh God, this is going to be a disaster waiting to happen. Is that trolley that they have on the main road, and the people, like, they bike,
they're bicycling and drinking,
and they're drinking. I could just see them falling right off.
Yeah,
and there's a car going right by, and they'll get clipped.
Mm-hmm.
I mean.
Yeah,
but no, I just enjoy the beauty of the North Fork. It's just great. In a lot of ways, the vineyards, promoted obviously wine, and brought tons more people out here. But at the same time, they preserved a lot of the land.
Mm-hmm.
So, now you have grapevines growing instead of potatoes, but. It's better than housing.
Better than housing developments.
Right. So,
but do you miss anything about the way it used to be? And I've asked this to some people, and some are like, well, you can't. There's always going to be sometimes things never going to stay the same. But was there anything that you kind of miss that you don't?
Yeah, I miss a lot of the old ways. I hate to say it, but now I lock my car door when I go to the shopping centers.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the past I didn't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
In New Suffolk, a little different. I keep the car running while I run into the post office. Of course, that's totally illegal. But,
mm-hmm.
But we just don't worry about that down there. But, but other things, yeah. I make fun of sometimes, you go to a farm stand and, the people get out of their car and they go, doot, 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 with locking their doors. I'm saying, you're 2 feet away. Are you that concerned? I mean,
I think it's like, it's this kind of like autopilot.
Yeah.
They're just like everywhere now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
And there's certain things that, have disturbed me over the years. One is that people actually said to us that why don't you shop during the week, because we're only here on weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, am I a second-class citizen now? I mean, I have just as much right to shop anytime I want. But they make it sound like, well, we're only here on weekends, so, you should be doing your shopping during the week.
It's too crowded.
Yeah. My wife had a argument one time. She was at a farm stand, and this woman with these big, grotesque, long fingernails, mm-hmm. Was actually poking her fingers into the peaches.
Oh.
And my wife went over and grabbed the last basket of peaches, and the woman said, "Aren't you rude?" to my wife. My wife says, "No, you're rude." She goes, "I'm trying to get the last peaches that you didn't stick your fingernails into." Mm-hmm. And it was like, that's the type of, and in the past that was never like that.
Mm-hmm.
We always visited farm stands that were self-serve.
Mm-hmm.
We still do to this day. I go to Stacy's for eggs.
Mm-hmm.
You just put the money in the box and that's it. We go up to Oregon Road, to some farm stands there. Put the money in the box. I mean,
mm-hmm.
It's that trust. My artist friend, for instance, she would sell a painting several $100s or whatever, mm-hmm. and the people say, "Oh, I don't have the money." She goes, "Take it home, just send me the check," mm-hmm. and she would always get the check. She was never beat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a type of
that kind of mindset is kind of disappearing.
Yeah, and like I said, even I find myself now, you have to lock the car doors,
mm-hmm.
And that type of thing. Whereas, like I said, in the past, we never thought of that at all. Left
mm-hmm.
the keys in the car, Our doors open, never a problem. But overall, I mean, yes, there's been changes, but would I move out of state? No, I still like it here. It's, I know a lot of people that did move out of state, but no, I still enjoy it here. It's still a nice, great place. In the past, it used to be, oh, thank goodness, after Labor Day, they're all gone. But, now it's not the case. People, especially after 9/11, and then with COVID, people are staying out here all the time. So, especially after COVID, now people realize they could just work from their home on a computer. Yes. Why do you have to be in the office? But it just, it's just nice out here. It's a different flavor. You get that beachy flavor. You get, just still have New England flavor as well. Like I said, it's different. You have, on the sound side, you have more hills and mountains not mountains, but more hilly, big trees, etc. So you get a diverse feeling out here.
And what about just kind of down the line? What do you kind of hope for the future of the North Fork and its community?
Well, I'm hoping that, like I said, something more arts within the town. Again, there's very few nonprofit organizations, and again, they struggle. It's especially in the arts, they really do struggle. But I would like to see, there's a lot of artists out here on the North Fork. Some of them, primarily, I guess, in Greenport, have their own galleries. But there's not too many galleries other than Greenport and Cutchogue and one in Jamesport, and then East End Arts in Riverhead. And the Guild is in Cutchogue, and again, the only nonprofits are East End Arts and the Guild. And you do have the Greenport Theater, and you have the North Fork Theater in Mattituck. But I was, one of the things I was trying to do with buying that church that time was to put all the arts together, both physical, which is paintings, etc., literary art, books and stuff, and then performing artists as well, and and it could work, all of those things. It's similar to what I do with shows. I want antiques with art and craft people. Some people say, oh, that doesn't go and stuff. Well, it does go. People, some people may like the antiques and they don't like the art. But you know what? The antique people all of a sudden will walk by my booth and say, oh, that's great. Look at that. That's the modern snack bar painting. And they weren't looking for that, but all of a sudden it appeals to them, or vice versa. So it just would be nice to have more art centers on the North Fork, or even bigger ones. There's nothing, hopefully, like Golden's Furniture, for instance. That's a beautiful place in there. It's just gorgeous, and yeah, they used it for furniture. I mean,
but it still has the bones of a theater.
Yeah. And it's just fabulous. I hope that, I think it's still for sale, but and hopefully someone, with a good vision will turn it back into a nice theater again. But that's what I would like to see. I would like to see more, nice galleries or whatever. We don't have anything like the Parish Gallery, for instance, out here. We need something of that size. It would be nice to have, and they do get good quality artists coming in and exhibits, and you have so many artists here that coordinated right, you could have something like that. Again, at the Guild, which is small, I try to have an artist featured every month. So you're talking, maybe 6 different venues to feature someone. But again, you put it on a larger scale, like the parish. That's what we need out here. We need something big. Again, it should be nonprofit, I think, not for profit, because you have too many regular gallery owners. But that's the one thing I always liked about the Guild, is that it is nonprofit. We are giving back to the community. There's a lot of things I want to preserve. There's, I want to make sure that certain, lectures are performed at the Guild, just different things to do at the Guild or anywhere for that matter. It's a nice sense to be able to give something to someone and not feel regret or say, oh, that cost me X amount of dollars or something like that. It's just nice to, and I get that. So I would just like to see more things like that. And again, I think that's what nonprofit should be. Again, you have nonprofits for animals. You have it for, cancer society things, or again, rescue things, or cast with underprivileged people and stuff like that. But with the arts, people aren't out there saying, hey, let's teach these kids how to paint or draw or do whatever. Maybe it stops them from being on a computer for an hour or two.
Makes them use some part of their brain that they don't use, more creative thinking that they're not using that much anymore. And it's another form of, I think it's an important learning and a skill and something that's good for people to do.
And again, whether you use it in the future or not, you're just developing a kid's mind. And I know this sounds kind of strange, but if you talk to people about me, I don't teach adults. I only teach children. For many reasons. One is because I think children are more open-minded and they're able to express themselves a little bit better. Whereas adults, they're kind of like, they're set in their ways. They, and I think adults have more opportunity if they wanted to go out and get an art lesson or whatever. For children, it's a little different. The parents have to set it up or do whatever. And but it's just nice that hopefully you'll keep them off the streets, or like you said, not attached to their phone or their computer, or just a different learning experience. I always appreciated, like I said, my brother-in-law teaching me stained glass. It wasn't a big thing to do. It was an hour's worth of time, but it was something that, as it turned out, I liked to do. So you don't know what you're going to like as you grow older. Did I know when I was a kid doing those drawings of cars and stuff like that I'd be painting today? No, but one like I said, the stained glass, it stuck with me. So I was able to do that, and that's pretty much what I try to do with children, try to give them a different experience.
Yes.
And the same thing, at one point I was setting up lessons in music. We were setting up, actually even playing chess. We had someone that was willing to sit down with kids and actually learn how to play chess and stuff. So, there's a lot of things out there, that people should be either aware of or be exposed to, rather than just the regular, like I said, your phone or.
But, and then was there, just kind of lastly, was there anything else you wanted to discuss or talk about that we haven't talked about?
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think we're pretty good.
We covered.
I think I covered some of the stuff that with the guild and myself. Again, it was just for me a journey to take on the presidency, so to speak. As it's a lot of work. Luckily, I have a lot of energy. But like I said, it paid off in ways that I didn't think it would. So I've enjoyed doing it. I don't know what will happen, once I can't do it. Hopefully someone else could pick up those reins and continue. Because the guild itself has been in business for, like I said, 76 year now.
Yeah.
So, but, again, it's just a wonderful way of life, for me anyway. Coming out here was very different, being an artist and able to, paint and it was just very satisfying. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I have no regrets what I do. I will never retire. There's no such thing. As long as I'm capable of creating, I will. And as long as I can do shows or display my work, I'll do that. Until my demise, I guess.
Yeah.
But because people say, to retire. It's like, no.
There's no retiring.
No, there's no retiring. I enjoy what I do. So this is my life, and like I said, it's just it's been a fun thing, and for a lot of people, especially artists, I think they want to be recognized. It's just nice, whether you're an actor, whether you're a singer, painter, it doesn't matter. You just like to be recognized, or at least the work that you do, and appreciated, and that's what keeps me going. If I didn't sell any work, why would I continue to paint? Type of thing. But knowing that people are out there and they still enjoy my work keeps me going. And so, like I said, it just won't stop. No. And it's funny because I do have a lot of interests, and like I said, I do get bored rather easily, even when I was in grade school, etc. But that's why I do so many things. That's why I play musical instruments. That's why I read a lot. And even my reading, I'll go from one type of book to a different type of book. I'll read a biography, then I'll read a novel, then I'll go into something science fiction, because I just like that difference all the time.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with my paintings. I don't want to be out there every day doing the same painting. So when I'm inspired, and then I paint, and that's what I do. So, but once I get involved in a painting, I'm pretty much in it.
For the long haul.
Yeah.
It's like, I got to finish this.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna just. Well, yeah. I mean, you can always rework it and keep.
Well, what happens is that I'll start a painting, and let's say it's at 6 o'clock, and then I'll be working on it, and next thing you know, it's like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I say, I got to get to bed.
Yeah.
Maybe I have something minor to do the next day, but you realize, you say, I got to stop, but in my heart, I know I could say, no, I could be up all night just continuing to do this. And sometimes that's what I do. I'll set a limit. Like I'll say, all right, I'll just finish with the trees, for instance, and I'll just do that. So I know that I won't make it an all-nighter type of thing.
Yeah.
You know, because you still have things to do. I mean, you have doctor's appointments, you have podcasts to go to, whatever it is, run the guild. But yeah, it's all good. Like I said, I never retire. It's not it's not there. But a lot of people look forward to that.
Depending on the type of job they're in.
Yeah.
It might be like, I'm done
right
with whatever business or corporation.
Yeah, and not for anything. A lot of, when I do shows, it's a lot of work. I mean, you're talking about most of the time I would set up, let's say, load my van on a Friday. I'd actually set up tents and tables and my display pieces on Friday night. Mm-hmm. Then you do the show on a Saturday, which starts at like 6 o'clock. You got to be there. Mm-hmm. You set up all your stuff and everything else. Then the show starts like at 9 to 4 or 5. And then you pack everything down. And then the following day is when I empty out my van. So it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of physical work as well, doing some of these shows. Even if you're not doing shows, just setting up, let's say you're doing an exhibit at a library. You got to bring all your artwork there. You got to hang it. You have to label it. You have to, price it and stuff. It's a lot of work involved, and people don't notice that. You're just not just painting. Mm-mm. There's a lot that goes into it. Even just coordinating with a library, getting on their list to exhibit. Mm-hmm. So it is, and that's just like part of it. Like I said, there's so much. You don't have to do everything that maybe I do. With cutting mats or doing your framing, and some people don't do that. They send it out or whatever. But there's a lot in the background. Just setting up your own web page, for instance, is sometimes mind-boggling, and then updating it, So it's not just doing one thing. There's a lot to do. But again, it just keeps me going, and like I said, that's what keeps me going. As long as I get that positive feedback,
you're good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Well. Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come in today and telling your story and all the things you've been doing on the North Fork, especially with the wonderful Old Town Arts and Crafts Guild, with keeping that going and up and running. And it was really wonderful to talk with you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. I don't want to stretch it into like a 4-hour thing, but, I'm sure there's a lot of people have questions or whatever, but, they could always reach me at my website, if you don't mind me saying. It's bobkuhne.com. It's BOBKUHNE.com. You can see all my work on the website. You'll notice that originals, a lot of them have been sold. Some of them are in my private collection, and others are still available. Everything that I do have, I do sell in prints, both paper prints and in canvas prints. And then as for other things like stained glass and stuff like that, well, those pieces are individual, so that's just potluck. But as far as the artwork goes and things like that, that's... Yeah, but again, like with game boards or birdhouses, again, once I make it and once it's sold, it's gone. Mm-hmm. So my wife always says the same thing about paintings. Oh, you can make another painting. Said that it never comes out the same. Mm-mm. Never. I've even tried it once. I took 2 canvases side by side, and I try to do every brush stroke, every color identical, and the 2 paintings came out totally opposite. So it doesn't work. But anyway, so that's my website. You could also go to the Art Guild's website, which is www.oldtownartsguild.org. and that will have information on membership. It'll have information on all our events, and we even have an online store. So even you could shop 24/7 on there. So yeah, so anybody has any questions or anything, you could definitely just reach out.
Wonderful.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 42 with Bob Kuhne. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.